Noah is reincarnated as a noble one day, but there's a major problem. Just take a look at that status screen, nothing but pure Asian parent disappointment. He was born as the 13th prince of the imperial royal family, and the emperor is quite interested in seeing his new baby boy. He is informed that Noah's highest magic affinity is with water, so he decides to gift him a fief near the water as a first birthday present. And as soon as he says that, Noah notices something appear next to his E-rank water magic. The emperor then asks to see Noah's stat screen, and Noah is a little worried since with a report card like this, he'd definitely end up getting thrown in a dumpster, but miraculously, when his status screen is displayed, his water magic stat has changed from E to double S rank. Everything else is still a solid F, but who cares about that? A literal baby has the highest water magic stat any of them have ever seen, and it's a clear indication that he's going to be a genius water mage in the future, so the emperor takes a liking to Noah. The reason his water magic is SS rank is due to the fief that he was granted by his father at birth, although on his personal status screen, it still appears as an E plus S. The other increases to his stats came from his maids, and he's still not sure why, but it seems like the more servants he has, the stronger he becomes. As for his level, it's still only 1, but it can apparently be raised infinitely, so he's bound to become overpowered eventually. But for now, he's still pretty weak. While having breakfast, one of his maids, Evelyn, comes over to inform him that his brothers, specifically the 1st and 4th princes, have come to see him. Normally, being visited by your brothers would be a good thing, but in the past 6 years of his life, Noah has learnt that those two are massive jerks, so he has to be very careful when dealing with them. He heads to the lounge area to meet his brothers, and after formal greetings, the 1st prince announces that he brought a gift for Noah. He then calls for his servant to bring the gift in, and as soon as Noah sees the sword, it immediately becomes clear to him that that shit is cursed. He could literally see the tormented souls of the dead hovering around it, and Albert definitely knows this thing is haunted, but he's pretending that it's just a normal gift. There's no way Noah can refuse a gift from the crown prince, so he is forced to accept it even though he knows it probably won't end well. He grabs the handle and lifts it up as Albert casually explains that this is a water magic sword and over 120 knights have died trying to use it. Noah is startled when he hears this, so he loosens his grip on the sword. But the 4th prince tells him there's no need to worry because so far, everyone who was unworthy of the sword died the moment they picked it up, so if the curse was going to affect him, he would already be dead by now. The reason Noah is immune to the curse is likely thanks to his double S water magic attribute, and it's kind of reassuring to hear that he's not at risk of dying because of this thing, but Noah is still pissed at the fact that Albert just risked his life for a dumb experiment, but he can't say that out loud. So he just waits for Albert to get up and leave on his own so he can have some peace and quiet. Later that day, Noah is walking through the halls with one of his maids, Zoe, and he notices that she seems to be unhappy, so he asks her if something is wrong. Zoe doesn't want to bother Noah by talking about her problems, so she's fine, but Noah is certain that she's not fine, so he orders her to tell him what the problem is immediately. Zoe complies and tells Noah she actually wants to take some time off work to handle family matters. Noah asks what family matters she's referring to, so she explains that her hometown recently experienced a flood and her mother's farm was washed away, so she currently has no means of sustaining herself. Zoe asked for advice on how she could raise enough money to rebuild the farm, and she was told the only way would be to work in the red light district for a while, which is what she intended to do during her time off, but Noah won't stand for it. He tells her he's going to give her mother a job. After all, he's been meaning to hire a professional rear gate closer, and since she's coming with a recommendation, he will pay her 10 reen a month. Zoe asks Noah if he's sure about this because 10 reen is much higher than the standard salary, and she has never heard of a rear gate closer job, but that's because Noah just made it up. He wants to help Zoe out, and it's his money anyway, so who's going to stop him? He also tells her that he has an old house on the outskirts of town, and she and her mother can stay there so they don't have to worry about rent either. Zoe has served him faithfully all his life, so there's no way he would let her sell her body in the red light district because of a flood. But speaking of the flood, there's one more thing Noah needs to do. He calls for his butler, Dylan, and orders him to make arrangements to buy up as much of the flood-damaged land as possible. Both Dylan and Zoe are shocked to hear this, but Noah explains that there are bound to be con artists who would try to scam all the innocent people who just lost their livelihoods, so he wants to secure them before that happens. Dylan is left utterly speechless because he can't believe Noah was able to predict the outcome so far ahead, even though he has so little experience as a 6-year-old. Noah experienced this kind of thing a lot during his past life, but he can't tell them that, so he just moves on without giving an explanation. Dylan is more than happy to help Noah procure the land, but he asks how they are going to acquire the funds to do so, since by his rough estimates, it would cost around 700,000 rein to pull that off. Zoe is shocked when she hears that number, and Noah doesn't blame her because it is practically a small fortune. The average adult here in the capital only earns 120 rein a year, and that's enough to afford a family, a house, and good food. Noah's household is obviously richer than the average adult, but even then, he only has about 500,000 rein to work with, so he needs to find a way to raise another 200,000 soon. He doesn't have many options, so he decides to sell the fief he owns, but Dylan tells him he can't do that. The land was a gift from the emperor, and selling it without permission would be a crime against the imperial family. Noah is aware of that, but he still wants to do it anyway because he has no other option, and he is willing to take whatever punishment his father decides to give him as a result. The next day, Noah and his retainers are busy making preparations to head to the flooded lands when he receives an unexpected visit from the fourth prince, Henry. Albert may be a jerk, but Henry is actually pretty nice once you get to know him, and he is genuinely concerned about Noah, so he came to warn him that the sword Albert gave him has a will of its own, so even if he is immune to the curse, he is still going to need to earn its recognition before he can use it safely. Noah takes his advice to heart, and shortly after, he departs for the village of Dasso. Upon arrival, he discovers that the word flood damage is a bit of an understatement for what happened here because it looks like Kratos and Poseidon had a fist fight out here. From the looks of things, Noah can tell that most of the homeowners must have lost their documents in the flood, so he orders Dylan to head to the government office and find all the copies he can get his hands on to make the purchase go smoother. In the meantime, Noah decides to head down there personally to see how the people are holding up after the flood. Zoe tries to stop him since reconnaissance isn't a job for a prince, but he tells her he's going whether she likes it or not, so she can either come with him or wait in the carriage until he returns. Zoe reluctantly agrees to go with Noah to investigate, and the situation is just as bad as it looks. All the crops have been completely destroyed, so there's no chance of there being a harvest this year, and without a harvest, the villagers won't be able to survive. Just then, Noah hears a bell ring and notices that all the villagers have started gathering in what used to be the town square. Zoe assumes that this must be for food distribution since the Empire provides disaster relief funds to all regions affected by natural disasters like these. Noah thinks it's good that this region's disaster relief system is functioning as intended, and he heads over to join the villagers in their meal. But the second he tastes the food, he takes back everything good he just said about this place. He has tasted British food that's less depressing than this sad excuse for a broth, and he's pretty sure the vegetables used here were rotten. One of the villagers hears Noah complaining about the food, and unaware of Noah's identity as a prince, he assumes he must be another unfortunate victim of the flood. He tells Noah that the food is always like this, and even if they complain, nothing is done about it because the people who made the food couldn't care less about dumb things like health or food poisoning. Just then, Noah hears a loud announcement about an inspection, so he asks Zoe what it's about and she informs him that the local government official, Lord Garrel, is here to inspect the quality of the food. Garrel walks up to the pot of mystery stew, and he thinks it looks like absolute shit, but he's not the one who has to eat it, so he doesn't care. He tells the chef to prepare some actual food for him back at the mansion, and the chef happily agrees since they both have an agreement. However, Noah refuses to let such callous behavior go unpunished. He confronts Garrel and asks him if he's allowing such substandard food to be served because he's pocketing the rest of the food budget for himself, and Garrel believes that Noah is just another powerless peasant, so he openly admits that he's skimming the food budget because he thinks there's nothing Noah can do about it. Listening to Garrel brag about stealing from starving flood survivors makes Noah's blood boil, so much so that the cursed sword begins to react. Garrel has had enough of listening to this random kid's disrespect, so he takes out his sword and prepares to slay him, but before he could do so, the Leviathan's sword flies out from its case and arrives next to Noah. Noah's strong will and sense of justice were enough for the sword to acknowledge him as a worthy wielder, so now that he is able to use its power, he effortlessly slices Garrel's head off for the crime of embezzling funds and threatening a royal prince. Soon after, Lord Rowan, Garrel's boss, shows up, and the guards try to convince him to have Noah arrested for killing Garrel. But as soon as Rowan sees Noah, he immediately recognizes him as the 13th prince and kneels to show his respect. Noah tells Rowan that they need to have a long chat regarding the situation here, which is a polite way of saying Rowan is in deep trouble for letting Garrel get away with this for so long. He says he has already punished Garrel, but the accomplices who helped him steal those funds are still over there, so he expects Rowan to deal with them appropriately. But in the meantime, Noah orders him to have a decent meal prepared for the people here. Later on, after Noah has completed the purchase of the village, Albert receives a report on what Noah has done, and he's surprised that his brother was able to use the sword without suffering any drawbacks, but he still has more plans in store for him in the future. Meanwhile, Noah is called into a meeting with his father to explain himself. He was fully expecting to be reprimanded for selling his land to buy a flood-damaged village, but to his surprise, the emperor actually thanks him. If Noah hadn't done what he did, then the damages suffered by those people would have been far greater. He can clearly see that Noah is a capable young man, so he asks him to continue serving the empire with everything he has, and Noah happily agrees. A little while later, we see Noah visiting the city of Mirrors, and he's here because he heard that there's a talented singer performing. As the show begins, Noah is captivated by the girl's beautiful voice, and he is really enjoying her performance. But all of a sudden, a group of thugs barges into the theater and immediately start yelling at the girl. The girl's father apparently owes them a lot of money, which is why she is working as a singer here to pay it back, but the thugs don't think she will be able to earn enough money to pay them back like this, so they threaten and yell at her to go work in the red light district. Everyone sees this happening, but they are all too scared to step up and do anything about it, so Noah decides to take action before things become any worse. He walks out onto the stage and quotes the law in the imperial constitution that specifically prohibits forcing children to pay off their parents' debts, so what they are doing is illegal. The thugs tell Noah to mind his own business and threaten to teach him a lesson if he doesn't back off, but Noah simply summons his sword and gives them all warning shots. Now, they know Noah isn't someone they can mess with, so they all back off, but they still yell that he's going to pay for this the next time they see him. Once the thugs are gone, Noah has his maid hand a business card to the owner of this theater and tells him that if those thugs happen to come back, he should tell them that the girl is under his protection. The owner takes a look at the card and is left speechless at the realization that Noah is the 13th prince. He then turns to the girl and asks her what her monthly living expenses cost. She is hesitant to answer since she spends a lot of money caring for her sick mother, but Noah suddenly tells her he is willing to pay her 25 rones so she can focus on singing without having to worry about money, and she doesn't have to worry about paying him back either. But for now, he would like her to finish her performance. After returning home, Noah is greeted by his head maid, and he is happy to be back home, but there are a bunch of people bowing outside the gate, and he's got no clue what that's about. The maid explains that those people are loan sharks, and they said they were here to apologize to him for what they did since they didn't realize that Noah was a prince. But Noah tells his maid to send them away because he isn't someone they can speak to whenever they wish. Just then, Henry shows up, and he heard the whole thing, so he tells Noah he made a smart choice because if he were to grant an audience to hoodlums like them, it would harm the reputation of the royal family. Noah agrees that it would be bad for their reputation to accommodate people like that, but that's not really the reason he chose to ignore them. He explains that there's actually a singer that he wants to support, and he felt that if he let the thugs think that he's still angry, then they wouldn't bother the girl anymore. Henry is surprised that Noah is willing to go so far for a singer, but he is just as surprised by the fact that he was able to think so far ahead in the first place. His other brothers like Frank and Gary are around his age, but they would never be able to come up with such a well-thought-out plan on the fly. Though, it's not like they are expected to since they are still children. Anyway, the reason Henry came here today is because he wants to discuss the sword, and on that note, Noah thanks him for the warning he gave last time about the sword having a will of its own, because it really helped him out. Henry is glad to hear it, but he wonders how Noah carries it around since the sword would normally be too big and inconvenient for a kid his size to carry, but Noah says that it's not much of a problem since he can do this. Henry is shocked when he sees Noah's sword appear out of nowhere, so he asks him how he did it, and Noah explains that he is simply shrinking his sword down and hiding it in his sleeve. The sword has been a national treasure for centuries at this point, yet no one has ever come close to doing something like this with it, and Henry takes this as a sign of Noah's natural talent. Later that evening, Noah escorts Henry to the front gate so he can return home, and that's when he notices that the thugs from earlier are still there begging for forgiveness, but he doesn't particularly care. One of the thugs is really annoyed by the fact that Noah keeps ignoring him, so he gets up and threatens to kill him, but Noah easily knocks him back down without moving a muscle. Henry asks him what he just did, so he explains that he just released some of Leviathan's power to get the man to calm down, and that indicates an amazing amount of control. But by this point, Henry isn't surprised anymore. That same evening, Noah decides to head into town for an event, and upon arrival, he is welcomed by the host, Radok. As they step into the banquet hall, Radok notices the sword at Noah's waist, and it looks rather special, so he asks him about it. Noah explains that this was a gift from his brother, the Great Sword, Leviathan, and they are all stunned at the realization that Noah is in possession of a national treasure. A few of the people present can't believe a child would own a national treasure even if he is a prince, and by a few people, I mean this particular dude in the back who openly says the sword is probably a replica toy. Noah refuses to let such disrespect go unpunished, so he unleashes a bit of his sword's power to prove that it is the real deal. But he ends up taking it a bit too far, nearly causing everyone present to faint from the overwhelming energy. He eventually ends his display of power, and everyone is visibly shaken. But to smooth things over, he talks about how amazing Noah is for being able to wield such a weapon, and everyone else goes along with it because they don't want to incur his wrath. In truth, Noah wasn't that angry about it, but the sword was, which is why it took action on his behalf. The host asks Noah what he plans to do with the man who disrespected him, and normally, a situation like this would call for serious punishment, but Noah decides to just let it go because it's not that deep. The party carries on as intended afterwards, and all the nobles approach Noah one after the other to introduce themselves. Next up is Byron Allen, the head of the Allen Company, and his daughter, Cindy. After taking one look at them, Noah deduces that Cindy must be adopted, and Byron is surprised to hear him say that, but Noah is indeed right about her being adopted. He asks how Noah could have known that Cindy is adopted, so he explains that he noticed that Byron carries himself with the composure of a noble born into high society, while Cindy carries herself as someone who is still learning the ins and outs. Furthermore, he can tell that she used to be a slave by the way she looked at him when he said she was adopted. Byron begins apologizing for not explaining sooner and clarifies that he indeed originally bought Cindy as a slave, but she is smart and learns quickly, so he thought it would be better to teach her as his daughter so she could inherit his business one day. He assumes Noah must hate the idea of a noble adopting a slave as his daughter, but on the contrary, Noah greatly approves of Byron's decision. He tells Byron that he and his daughter are welcome to visit his mansion anytime, because he would love to hear more about their lives. The next day, Noah heads out into the market to take a look around, and while there, he happens to run into one of his brothers, the 8th prince, Oscar. He asks what Noah is doing out here all by himself, so he explains that he was just taking a stroll for fun. Oscar doesn't see what's so fun about a stroll, but since Noah isn't busy right now, he asks him if he would like to join him for a little treasure hunt. This gets Noah's attention, so he agrees to join, and Oscar takes him to Cobalt Street. This place is known for the countless artifacts that are sold here, but there are also a fair number of counterfeits as well, which is why finding genuine artifacts is really difficult. Noah and Oscar spend the afternoon searching the market for any decent artifacts, but no matter how hard Oscar looked, he couldn't find anything good. He is ready to call it a day and head back home, but all of a sudden, Noah spots a book that catches his eye. He immediately offers to buy it, so the stall owner says he has to pay 3 rein. After paying, Oscar comes over to ask Noah if there's anything special about the book, but the second he lays his eyes on it, he realizes that the book is the grimoire of the legendary sorcerer, Andrea, and something this valuable would normally be worth thousands of rein, so the stall owner just lost his retirement fund without knowing it. Oscar asks how Noah knew it was a grimoire since very few actually know what it looks like. But in truth, Noah had no idea that this was a grimoire to begin with. He just saw one of his stats increase when he touched it, so he wanted to buy it for the stat boost. But now that he thinks about it, if this thing increases stats, then it must be similar to his sword, which would mean it has a consciousness of its own. To test his theory, Noah points Leviathan at the book, and all of a sudden, dark energy begins to pour out of it as a malevolent spirit emerges. Oscar now realizes that the grimoire must have had the sorcerer's soul sealed within it, and now that it has become a vengeful spirit, it is going to attack anything within range. He warns Noah to stand back, but he knows exactly how to deal with this thing, so he raises his sword and hits it with a water slash at full strength. As a result, the spirit is completely destroyed, and Oscar is glad that the situation has been handled, but he is concerned that someone might have gotten hurt during the chaos. However, Noah tells him there's no need to worry about that since he made sure to aim his blast towards the sky. It is impressive that Noah was able to make the best decision when given so little time to think, but Oscar is more amazed by the fact that he defeated the spirit of a legendary sorcerer in one strike. Just then, a local shop owner named Alan approached the two of them and says he has a proposition for them. He explains that he has an artifact that he has been unable to use for a while now, but after seeing Noah's display of strength, he thinks he may be able to awaken it. Noah is intrigued, so he and Oscar follow Alan back to his shop where they are presented with a special ring. For most people, it doesn't do anything, but according to the rumors, it will awaken when someone worthy puts it on. It sounds like a classic scam, but Noah has nothing to lose, so he decides to try it, and to his surprise, the ring reacts to him and ends up forming powerful armor around him. Noah decides to get the ring since it has a myriad of defensive abilities, and on his way back, he gets an unexpected opportunity to test it out as the lone shark from before tries to attack him for revenge. The ring automatically creates a shield to defend Noah, and the guy gets tackled to the ground, so he won't be a problem now. Noah later heads to one of the singer's performances, and after attacking a noble, that lone shark is doomed, so the singer doesn't need to worry about him anymore. But it turns out that he wasn't the only troublemaker, because after the singer finishes her performance, two drunk dudes jump on stage and try to flirt with her. Noah steps in and runs them off, but he is getting tired of the constant trouble here, so he asks the owner to stop accepting customers like them. The owner agrees that it's a bit of a problem, but these are the only customers he has, so he can't afford to stay in business without them. In that case, Noah offers to buy the business outright and offers the owner a huge sack of coins. The singer approaches Noah to thank him for protecting her, and she's not sure how she could ever repay him, but Noah says that all he wants is to hear her sing, so he asks her to perform one more song for him. One morning, Noah is getting ready for the day when he receives news that dead Marley, the general of Wholejoy, is here to visit him. Wholejoy is one of the most promising lands within Noah's fief, so he agrees to meet with Marley and tells his maids to bring him inside. Marley greets him in the meeting room, but Noah tells him there's no need for such formalities and asks Marley to have a seat. Marley and Noah first met a year and a half ago, around when Marley was first appointed as the general of Wholejoy, and speaking of which, Noah asks him how it's going. He recalls that Marley was given an imperial order to manage the flood control of the area, but by the look on his face, he can tell that things aren't going well on that front. Wholejoy is a bountiful grain farmland that runs along a curved river, but this makes it prone to occasional flooding, which is why the emperor ordered funds to be provided for disaster relief. Marley explains that he hasn't been able to make any significant changes, and the main reason is that the Minister of Finance keeps finding excuses to avoid dispersing the necessary funds. Noah is incredibly displeased when he hears this, since it sounds like a clear-cut case of misappropriation of national funds, so he asks Marley to come with him, because they are going to pay the minister a little visit. A little while later, Noah pays the Minister of Finance a visit over lunch, and the minister is just as far and greasy as Noah expected. The minister initially tries to flatter Noah, but he gets straight to the point and asks him why he hasn't given Marley the funds needed to manage the flooding in Wholejoy. The minister remains calm and tells Noah he has a very good reason for that, but Noah cuts him off and tells him he had better not be looking down on him because he is a kid. After all, belittling a prince is an executable offense. The minister is now starting to get a little nervous, so he quickly explains that during last year's flood, the emperor generously granted Wholejoy a tax exemption, so he thought it would only be fair for Wholejoy to use the money they saved to fix the flooding this year. That's the most BS statement Noah has heard in his 6 short years of life in this world, so he asks the minister if he takes him from a fool or something. It is clear that the exemption was granted because Wholejoy didn't have any money to pay taxes last year, so for the minister to speak as though Wholejoy still has that money is an insult to Noah's intelligence. The minister realizes he's in hot water now, so he frantically thinks of another excuse and then tells Noah that the reason he can't hand over the flood money is because he needs it for the emperor. He thinks that by using the emperor's name, Noah won't be able to argue with him anymore. But his excuse was that the emperor is getting pretty old, so he wants to build a royal villa for him. And this is too much for Noah to handle. He tells the minister that he has just committed a grave crime because not only did he call the emperor an old man, he also used his name as a means to cover up his scheme, and to make it all worse. His excuse was something as dumb as, "There's a territory flooding, but I need to use the money to build a villa." The minister begins begging for forgiveness because he realizes how badly he just messed up, but Noah tells him that if he doesn't want the emperor to hear about this, then he had better hand over the funds at once. The minister runs off in a panic to do as Noah instructed, and it looks like the matter has officially been resolved, so Marley thanks Noah for his help. He also apologizes for getting Noah involved in a situation like this, but he had no other choice since there was no way he could have handled the prime minister on his own. As Noah prepares to return home, he suddenly receives a message stating that the emperor wants to have a meeting with him. Noah is surprised since it's rare for his dad to summon him out of nowhere, but it must be important, so Noah drops everything and heads over to his father's castle. Upon arrival, Noah greets the emperor, but he tells Noah there's no need to be so formal around him. First off, he wants to congratulate Noah for doing such a good job dealing with the Minister of Finance. Noah is surprised that the emperor already knows about that when it literally happened a couple of minutes ago. But he is told that information is one of the strongest weapons one can wield, and as the emperor, his information network is unmatched. Noah appreciates his father's praise, but he tells him he was only doing what he thought was right. Even so, the Emperor is impressed that Noah can see past deception so easily despite only being 6 years old. He also heard about how Noah mastered Leviathan's power in such a short amount of time, and it is truly a remarkable feat considering the dark nature of the sword. Noah is well aware how dark Leviathan can be, since it definitely would have killed all those people at the party if he hadn't stopped it. But even though the sword is powerful, Noah hasn't really learned how to properly wield a sword yet, which is why the Emperor prepared an instructor for him. This is Damian Noble, and he is the Empire's greatest swordsman, whom none have been able to defeat, and the Emperor wants Noah to learn as much as he can from him. Noah agrees to the arrangement, but before any formal lessons begin, Damian says he would like to have a friendly duel with Noah. The Emperor doesn't think that would be fair since Noah doesn't know how to fight with a sword, but Damian assures him that this is just going to be a simple test to see how much potential Noah possesses. The Emperor eventually agrees to the duel, so Damian raises his sword and tells Noah to attack him in any way he wants, so Noah grabs hold of Leviathan and charges at Damian. As he fights, Noah can feel the memories and skills of the previous user of Leviathan flowing into him, so his swordplay is growing sharper by the minute. He and Damian eventually lock swords, and just when Damian thinks he's got the upper hand, Noah swipes his sword upwards, disarming the greatest swordsman in the Empire and leaving both Damian and the Emperor speechless. Noah possesses the skills of a sword master, so there is nothing left for him to be taught. The Emperor is astonished by the fact that the greatest swordsman just lost to a 6-year-old. He's still really proud of his boy for accomplishing something so great. As a reward, he offers to make Noah the head of this year's Knight Selection exam, and Noah is greatly honored by the opportunity. The Knight Selection exam is an annual event involving participants from all corners of the world. Within the Empire, military might is incredibly important. Fighters win their regional preliminaries, all gather in the capital for one final battle, and the one who emerges victorious earns the title of Knight. The first job of a newly appointed Knight is to become the subordinate of the head judge of the tournament, and whenever Noah gains a talented subordinate, his stats go up, so he is excited to see what happens. The judging is usually done by either round robin or by elimination, but Noah has something different in mind for this year's tournament, so he asks for permission to cancel the regional preliminaries and hold the entire tournament in the capital. His reason is because he would like to see all the battles in person, and he wouldn't want any strong candidates to be excluded for arbitrary reasons, because he's not there to stop it. The Emperor tells him he is free to do whatever he wants, so Noah moves ahead with his plan. Back at home, Noah asks Zoe if her home village ever sends competitors for the Knight Selection exam. She confirms this, but adds that her village usually only sends one person in hopes of them making a name for themselves on the village's behalf. Noah informs her that he has decided to get rid of the regional preliminaries, so her village is free to send as many candidates as they wish, and Zoe is happy to hear that. But she tells Noah that there's still a big problem. Part of the reason her village only sends one candidate is because they can't afford the travel and lodging costs necessary to stay in the capital for the duration of the test. The entire village basically has to pool their money together to afford a single candidate, so sending more isn't really possible for them. However, Noah doesn't want talented people to be held back by a lack of finances, so he decides that he is going to cover the travel and lodging expenses for all candidates this year. That certainly is a wonderful idea, but paying for accommodations for that many people would cost an astronomical amount, and they don't have that kind of money to burn. However, Noah already has a plan in mind. He says he's going to buy all the vacant buildings in the area to house the candidates, and if that isn't enough, then he will have a hostel built to accommodate them. That way, the money spent will still have value even after the tournament is over. As for food, he plans to consult all the merchants he has connections with to find the best deal. He eventually calls a meeting with Byron and asks for an estimated cost for his plan. However, when Byron provides an estimate, he is caught off guard because the price is way too low. There's no way Byron could make a profit with numbers like these, but Byron says it's not a problem since he just wants to be of use to the prince. Yeah, Noah isn't falling for that. He knows merchants never give stuff away for free, so he asks Byron to come out with it and state whatever it is that he wants in exchange. Byron is surprised that Noah knows so much about how business works when he is so young, but since that's the case, there's no point in trying to hide it anymore. He talks about how there is a selection process for castle staff, and he was hoping that Noah could pull a few strings so one of Byron's servants could be hired. That way, if any important business were to go down within the castle walls, Byron would be one of the first to hear about it. Noah agrees to the terms, and as a display of sincerity, Byron swears to fully support Noah and Noah alone within the royal family. Gaining Byron as a subordinate has really boosted his stats, but while checking his stat window, he realizes that his water magic stat just went down by 1 rank. His high water stat comes from the territory he owns, so this must mean that something has gone wrong in Almeria. He immediately rushes to meet with his father to inform him that something has happened in Almeria, and while the king does believe him, he asks Noah how he could possibly know that. Noah can't exactly reveal his stat screen, so he keeps his answer vague and says he has been noticing signs for a while now. This apparently satisfies the emperor's curiosity, goes on to talk about the situation, and that's when Noah finds out that there is a rebellion going on there. The emperor asks Noah if he would like to handle the matter personally, but after giving it some thought, Noah says he doesn't want to do it. Most nobles would jump at the chance to claim glory in battle, but he believes Henry would be a better choice since he has more experience with this kind of situation. Later that night, Henry and Noah are riding in a carriage together, and Henry asks him if he's sure about this since with the way this nation operates, he could have significantly raised his status by gaining a great achievement in battle. Noah explains that he isn't skilled enough to be deployed into a battle, and even if he did manage to find a way to survive, many of his soldiers would likely die in vain, and that's something he would like to avoid. All of a sudden, Leviathan warns Noah of hostile intent up ahead, so he tells the driver to stop the carriage. He knows it must be the rebels attempting to assassinate him, and since it's him they are after, he takes off running to get as far away as possible from Henry. Just then, 4 water jets shoot up from the ground, and they all converge on Noah as the rebels show themselves, but Noah has defended himself with his shield, so he is still perfectly fine. The rebels then try to jump Noah, but he is far too skilled for them to handle, so Noah easily takes them down all in a matter of seconds. Henry is amazed by how easily Noah was able to take the rebels down, but he thinks it's a shame that they didn't get to interrogate any of them since they could have gotten some valuable information. That's when Noah informs him that the rebels are actually still alive. All he did was knock them out, so Henry is free to interrogate them as much as he wants. Later on, Noah had heard that the Almerian rebels consist mainly of cavalry, but Almeria doesn't have any horse farm, so the rebels must be getting their horses and supplies from outside the territory, and knowing that gave Noah an idea. He calls for Byron and orders him to buy all of the horse feed in the regions surrounding Almeria. This way, they will run out of food for their horses sooner or later, and they should make it a lot easier for Henry to wipe out the rebellion. This was the end of episode 3. Subscribe to not miss the next part.